Saline should be period because of if you look at
Well,
the
we
whole
could have
thing,
put Charter on that one and
It's okay, I think I
Paul
got
was
it.
actually saying, my thing, I'm not so sure that guy's going to do it because he hasn't done anything in that house in 20 years. He's been there 10 years.
Got a fever about it too.
Oh, she's not feeling well?
No, she's got strep
Strep throat.
throat.
Oh, dear, okay.
Statute of limitations on the.
All you gotta do is get struck.
No, I-
Take the day off, good.
Andy's out.
You
Of
should
course, that's something.
I'd like to call this Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank Thank you very much. Members present this evening are Council Members Gearboss, CO Rice, Lash, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Morrow from City staff. Present in the room this evening, we have Clerk Royal, Community Development Director Harrington, City Engineer Humphreys, Treasurer Cole, and I believe the City Manager will be joining us for at least a portion of tonight's meeting remotely. She's a little bit under the weather this evening. The rest of you who are in the audience, we welcome you and we encourage you to sign in the back table. There are also copies of the agenda as well as hearing devices if you require them. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended, noting that the dissolution of the Drug Task Force has been removed from the consent agenda. That will be considered hopefully at our next meeting. And I believe there was a change in numbering under new business, but other than that, there were no substantive changes.
So moved.
As amended.
Moved by Gearboss to approve as amended. That was seconded by CO. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to public comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on enumerated agenda items this evening? You can come forward. This gentleman is going to go first, and you're welcome to come next, ma'am. Say again?
Yes.
Yes, you got to make sure the green light is illuminated, and if you're, and again, you have to limit your comments to items that are actually on tonight's agenda.
I behave.
Sometimes you have to push it and hold it.
I don't need, I have loud voice, maybe you can just. All right. Mr. Mayor,
Hold on, let him swap out the mic.
Gotta wait. So you're gonna hold it right here? You hand it to the next person.
Check.
Go ahead, Cheng-Ming.
Mr. Mayor, Council, friends, my name is Cheng-Ming Fan, local residents. I have two things I want to talk all written in here. So the first one is about youth league or youth council. And I don't see the city have the representatives in this term. And maybe you haven't decided yet. I want to say I really want to contribute my efforts to link with the Saline City Youth Group. They're not just wonderful, they also probably remember me when I had chance to do the sub-teacher jobs. And it is very important to let the city of Saline have the youth group to understand they, in the mission statement, they will be the lead. They will be strong to lead, to change the environment in a healthy way. Follow Whitmore's MHCP. Is youth group number 1? Is youth group number 2? Number 3, tasks. So I like to emphasize there. The secondly is about the upcoming board commission meetings on March 27. I saw that we have the strategic meeting, but now I don't see it. Oh, I'm sorry, it's postponed to April 8th. So I do want to have a copy of last time the meeting we decided the mission, the vision, and the goals of the Saline City. I strongly recommend and the staffs and the council member consider add the environmental protection and as need put in the strategic plan. And because of this is not just last for the next 10 years, next 50 years, but also last the entire history. So we have to really put that as a strategic Mayor, do I have another 10,
You have 12 seconds,
12 seconds? So can I change topic a little bit?
as long as it's on the agenda.
Well, it is on the agenda. As I said, that this is so important. And then the other one is the Parks Commission.
Thank you, Cheng Ming. You'll have an
Thank you.
opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting. There's somebody else in the back who wishes to speak. Please come forward, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello. Press button.
I believe it's on. If the green light is illuminated at the base or at the bottom, it should be on.
Test one,
Yep,
two.
it's on. Yep.
Hi, I work with some of you. I'm on the Environmental Commission. But this isn't about any comments from the Environmental Commission. I want to commend the city for doing the road work plan that you're going to be doing. And my comments are with regard to adoption of the Transportation Asset Management Plan. And I'll say my name, Marcia Castellani, 351 Rosebud Lane. Supposed to do that first couple times attending these meetings, so. Anyway, my comment about that is I just want to bring some awareness. There is, and I have a couple photos. There is the potential that there may be some utility issues remaining on Hawthorne Way in Wildwood, and potentially maybe on Rosebud Lane, which is the road I live on. When I was speaking to some of the other folks down my road, they were saying that the end of Rosebud is still starting to sink. And on Hawthorne, and this, I'll share these pictures, but this is the filter from 2631 Hawthorne Way. My father's been raising this issue for a number of years, and he's asked his neighbors whether their incoming water line is that dirty. And he also has sediment, so I'll give you those photos. But apparently no one on either house next to him or across the street is having the same issue. So I'm no water supply expert, but we're wondering if the line that comes into his house is lower than the other two lines and he's getting a pocket of sediment. So after reading everything that was presented for the transportation work asset management plan, I saw that there was a comment about if there's any known utility issues to please raise them. Again, thank you for doing all the road work. I don't want to stop anything that you're doing. Just wanted to raise the awareness on that issue. The other issue is Mom is walking in a four-wheel walker, and we walk her down the roads, and I just want to make sure that we're going to have the same road function that we currently have. Yeah, there's cracks, but we can still walk her on the road. So there's conflicting information that I was presented. One was that the road was going to be really choppy and she was going to hate it. And the other one just now that the road is going to be really smooth. So if it's smooth, no issue. Just want to make sure we take into consideration the elderly who are using these walkers. And because the sidewalks are too narrow, they usually walk them on the road, especially like for folks who have dementia. And you need a person on either side of the individual. So just wanted to raise that awareness. But those are the comments.
Thank you, Marcia. Do you have some photos that you can provide us?
yeah.
Do the photos also include your contact information? Do you have your contact information on the photographs?
I do not, but I can write that.
Please do. And if you'd like to submit them to the city clerk or even the engineer in the back, we will be sure to have somebody, the appropriate staff person, follow up with you.
Right, and I can also share this with the Environmental Commission on Wednesday, but I knew you were making decisions today, so I just wanted to raise
We're
it.
glad that you came. Thank you.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, leave the microphone right there on the podium. Yep. I believe there's some additional speakers. Thank you for your comments.
Oh, Mary Hess. Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's working. I was wondering, as far as the presentation during the healthcare task force, if they could have a report on urgent care that's outside of town across from the old Chevrolet store, but on how it's doing. And then 2444, the liquor license renewal. I notice people every so often have their drinks in a glass, and a couple glasses I've seen fall off the table, and it really makes a dangerous mess. So I didn't know if that had been covered during the possibility of breakage. And I know we have security up there. And then there was one other.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. So there are additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, Ben Goodman, west side of town. I was here to talk about the dissolving of the drug task force, but that's not happening, so I will move on to the marijuana dispensaries getting curbside pickup. When they came in, Planning Commission was very vocal before they would agree to allow dispensaries in this town that there was no curbside pickup. And nobody argued. Rush didn't argue, and none of the other dispensaries that didn't make it in town because they never got done with their site plans, they didn't argue either. And now this is an issue. Planning Claire has made very vocal to them. Yeah, we will allow you the medical and recreational license, but we don't want curbside pickup. And numerous council members that attended those meetings that are no longer here were at those meetings, and they can tell you. You can go watch the videos on Saline Video YouTube channel and see. I live on the west side of town. I live near a dance studio and right across the street from a Catholic school. It's really not right. It doesn't send a good message to your community when you allow curbside dispensaries right next to children. It's just, you don't do that. There's certain cutoffs you need to stand up for, and this is one. I'm going to die on that hill. I have worked with kids for over 25 years. I've had 13 Division I athletes lose their college scholarship because of weed. Not because the school was out to get them because they smoke weed, because it depreciated the value of their athletic abilities. It took their athletic abilities away from them. I lost numerous kids that started smoking weed, got into ecstasy, got into acid, and eventually got into meth. It is a gateway drug. And we need to educate our children on the impact. Now, I know it's saved a lot of people, especially those with cancer. But at that point in your life, you're old enough to know, I'm going to use it for a certain time. Kids don't know that. They don't know the limitations. Like, they don't know how to give up when they start something. Addiction's a hard thing to do, and I just really think we send a wrong message to our kids when we allow curbside. It's no different than a drug deal. Okay, we can say what we want, but it's no different than what a drug deal looks like. So please make the right decision and agree with what Planning Commission agreed to when they started allowing these dispensaries in town. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening? I would defer to the city clerk. Were there any comments provided in writing in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? No. Easy enough. Then we will transition to the one and only presentation, which is the final report and analysis from the City of Saline Healthcare Improvement Task Force, and we have both the chair and vice chair present with us. Good evening. Thank you for your attendance, and as soon as you are ready to begin, it looks like the presentation is up on the screen. You may start.
Am I live? Okay.
You are live.
Good evening. We're going to run through the final recommendations the task force developed based on the work that they've been doing since inception. So the final recommendations fall under 4 categories. Formation of a long-term health and wellness committee or coalition, the healthcare resource repository. We're suggesting that you seek grant funding to fund some of the ideas and projects that came out of the group, and continue to explore the Healthy Cities and Communities initiatives that we were looking into. So our first recommendation, form a health and wellness committee or coalition. Capitalize on the standing committee, on a standing committee to facilitate activities and awareness. There's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of opportunity to bring more awareness about what is available, about health and wellness and promoting healthy living within the community. We not only want existing citizens to feel like they can age in place, we want the citizens who grew up here to feel like this is a community they can come back to because it promotes the things that they value, and you're going to be able to show that if you continue to invest in a long-term health and wellness committee. Collaborate with community groups and experts. There's lots of groups that are already doing a lot of this work, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration, including some of the committees that already exist within the city council. There's a lot of overlap in what everybody is doing. The goals are ultimately to create a community that supports all of its citizens. And there's a lot of experts within our community that can provide subject matter information to bring more awareness to the community. Look for intersections with existing groups and programs within the community. I know there's a lot of interest in bringing maybe some food resources downtown to support when social services is closed, and or if somebody can't get over to the social services location. It's things like that where we can look at collaboration with things that are already going on. And then use your social media channels to connect with citizens and promote events. I'm not sure how many people know that you can go to the farmer's market and get a class on healthy cooking, or use your bridge card to get fresh and healthy produce. I didn't know that until I walked through it a few weeks ago. And that's, just showing that there's a lot of opportunity to provide more information to the people who live here about what exists. Our next recommendation is the Healthcare Resource Repository. It is drafted. Councilmember Nicole has the draft. She is going to make it into a final product that is ADA compliant and able to be published on the web and possibly printed. It's a living document. It's going to continue to grow and evolve as things become available, as awareness about resources becomes available. So we want to make sure that it's available in as many channels as possible. And lastly, we want to create a fillable form on the website that allows people to submit ideas or updates. That way it can be collected in one space, and when somebody has time to sit down and work on it, they can make those additions or corrections, and that it stays current. Seeking grant funding. There were a lot of fantastic ideas within the task force, and a lot of it was, how do we pay for this? How do we fund this? How do we make sure that it has longevity so that it doesn't live in our idea well, but can actually come to fruition? So we would also suggest that you consider contracting with a grant specialist, someone whose subject matter expertise is grant writing, awareness of grant programs and what's out there to write for, and assistance with grant management, which can be a huge time investment, making sure that you're doing it correctly, that all the paperwork is being filed and the reports. But I think that the ability to be successful and bring programs in is going to require additional funding, and there's so much money out there, both within the state, federally. There's lots of private, not-for-profit organizations that want to promote these things. So it's definitely worth pursuing. Healthy communities initiatives. So when we think about the health and wellness of the community, we have to think about a couple of things. There's a lot of higher level resources or things that are great, but if you can't provide yourself with housing or food or transportation, then the other stuff is fluff, to be honest. When we talk about social determinants of health, we're talking about the non-medical factors that influence health, both risk factors and outcomes. There's lots of things we as a community can do to make sure that we are improving our community's social determinants of health. Those things are, there's 5 key determinants: economic stability, access to healthcare, the quality of the healthcare. When we looked at resources and we started building the repository, we realized there are a lot of resources. We need to increase awareness to improve access. Education. We are proudly one of the best school districts in this community, which means that we're giving our youth an opportunity. We're reducing their risk just by giving them that great foundation. Neighborhood and building environments, community. When we talk about blue zones, community plays into that too. How are you tied to your community? Isolation is a risk factor that impacts health outcomes. When we have community and support, we do better. We live healthier lives. Lastly, under the other thing I was thinking about today, I do a lot of work under the American Heart Association's guidelines and risk reduction for stroke and heart attack. Another foundational piece that can be used to drive what the healthcare committee or what the community can do is called the Life's Essential 8. And it's tied around eating better and being more active, getting healthy sleep, knowing your numbers around cholesterol and blood sugar. These are all things we can promote and, through group activities and using the social media channels, meet people's needs, meet them where they are, and help them to reduce their risks and give them an opportunity to just be healthier. Before I take questions, I want to just take a second to say thank you. Thank you to all of you for the opportunity for me to chair this task force and utilize my experience to give back to the community. But also, we had an entire task force. Bethany and Sue, Council Member Theo, Chief Ratzik sat with us for a while. Dr. Attili, Roxanne is here tonight. Council Member Rice joined us at the end, but she's going to make sure that that resource repository gets published. We've had wonderful youth interns, Nancy and Jennifer, and Vaish and Shruti. And we have a lot of past members, people who came and went, and while they were with us, they gave us a lot of important information and expertise. And lastly, Jamie, who was a huge volunteer within the community. Sorry. And unfortunately, we lost her in the fall. So with that, any questions?
Very good. Thank you for that. And I'm glad that you made a reference to Miss Fear, because we do extend our sincerest condolences to the entire community, and she was a great asset to the Healthcare Improvement Task Force. So her contributions are recognized and very much appreciated. Bethany, Roxanne, is there anything that you would like to add before I ask for comments from my two council colleagues who sat on the Healthcare Improvement Task Force? Bethany, you're good? Roxanne, you okay? Excellent. Okay. Well, let me start with Councilmember CO, since he's the our long-serving liaison to the Healthcare Improvement Task Force. Is there anything you'd like to add at this time, sir?
No, Your Honor. I think they've covered it pretty well. Thank you.
Very good. And then Councilmember Rice, you were added to the Healthcare Improvement Task Force in January. Anything you'd like to add, and maybe you could provide some brief messaging on the forthcoming healthcare repository that will be provided to first council and then subsequently the community?
Yeah, I think this is serving us really well as kind of a baseline for what task forces can be in the city. I think these recommendations are fantastic, so that we can then move them into a deeper or a broader committee or commission. So I really commend you on thinking through these recommendations thoughtfully, and we've had some conversations about how we can actually implement some of these things and tap into our resources, and I'm really excited about that. As far as the repository goes, a conversation needs to be had with our PR generalist to kind of look at our website, where we would serve the community best. Perhaps we create a community wellness page. And then I myself am just taking it, making it ADA compliant, 508C for those who are in the tech world. And then we can have further conversations about how we want to distribute and promote this throughout the community. But I will say that a lot of thought went into the repository as far as, covering all the bases of health and wellness throughout the community. So not just, doctor's offices and dentist offices, but what resources are available across Washtenaw County, where's the expertise, and how can you reach out to these different entities. But then also looking at some of those transportation issues that we talked about. There's some space for that as well. So more conversations to be had about the repository, but I think we have a great basis, and I look forward to getting that cleaned up and having further conversations with, like I said, our PR generalist and our web developer and seeing where we can best put that.
Very good. Thank you for that. And just to confirm, this has already been communicated to my council colleagues, but I provided verbiage just today to the city manager and to the city clerk to update our city's board and commission roster to include a narrative pertaining to a new community, the Saline Community Wellness Task Force, which would be responsible for a number of items that you enumerated early in your presentation this evening, but the focus would also be a bit broader to include wellness, healthcare amenities, mobility, substance abuse addiction, and domestic violence prevention. So that form should be updated within the next few days. It'll be disseminated to council. If there's anybody who's a member of the existing healthcare task force who would like to serve in that capacity, please have them fill out that application. My tentative goal is to either seek approval from City Council to establish this new group at our first meeting in April, which would be the 1st. At the very latest, it would be our second meeting in April, which would be the 15th. So please be mindful of that.
I will share that with everybody. Excellent. As we.
I appreciate it. Let me start to my right this evening and end to my left. Not sure what's going on with the computer.
Trying to get Colleen in.
Okay. Mr. Lesh, can I start with you? Do you have any questions or comments for the chair of the Healthcare Improvement Task Force or any of the members who are present this evening?
Well, I would just like to say, as somebody who just came on, and, I get to see the conclusion of your work now, and it looks wonderful. I think it's a big addition into the city, and I commend you for all of your hard work.
Mr. Seo, anything you'd like to add?
Just, Your Honor, that I've always been impressed with the dedication and the commitment of the people on the task force, and thank you for the work you've done.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Thank you very much for presenting tonight. You had some wonderful comments. You had a lot of ideas. Are those enumerated somewhere so that they will continue on? There was a lot of statements you had made about some work that you had already started, just so that it doesn't die on the vine, understanding where is that going to be housed?
I will take the past meeting minutes and create a brief that I will send to you guys that you can then share with whoever is going forward on the healthcare wellness task force, however you decide to move forward, just to make sure that some of these ideas are kind of spelled out and written out so that they know kind of how to move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And I'm very much looking forward to the repository. I think that can be an asset and a tool for our community. I look forward to having that information available, whether it's QR codes that can be scanned or print copies that our police, our firefighters can have and bring on site to situations in which people may need additional services at some point. I think that would be a tremendous asset for our community, and so I'm very eager to see that. My last comment is I'm just a little unclear about the Health and Wellness Committee or task force that the mayor is representing. I've been working with the city manager and our legal counsel for an extended period of time. We are transitioning the drug task force to a community outreach wellness type program. And it may be similar to what the mayor is talking about. I just don't see it being aligned, unfortunately, with his time frame right now. There are some logistics that we've run into with it. It's definitely forthcoming, but what we thought was going to be an easy transfer of a 501 has definitely got us not just hoops, but they're sort of on fire at this point that we're trying to jump through. So, but it's definitely coming, and it's definitely a priority for the city, so I'm looking forward to that.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for looking at what each of these groups have been doing and looking at where the overlap is, whether it's one overarching committee with some subcommittees or some smaller groups that focus on domestic violence for one, or, the wellness option or addiction, whatever, those key factors are that you guys decide you want to focus on. I think execution is going to just be about thinking about those details and organization because there's just a lot of overlap. When we talk about wellness, it's such a big topic. There's so many things, but our health, our risk factors, how we do our longevity is all tied into that. It's not just about the brick and mortar healthcare facilities within the community, but it's that community support, and it's making people feel like they have representation, that they're seen, that someone is paying attention and working to make them. That's kind of how it all comes together. It is DEI. It is, it's all of these pieces together that ultimately create a community that focuses on outcomes for the people who live here, that makes people want to live here.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I should have added earlier, with a forthcoming wellness task force, there will be opportunities for people to serve even in a unofficial capacity. So while there will likely be between 7 and 9 members, if there are individuals who would like to serve as an intern or a volunteer or support specific initiatives or causes, we would welcome that. And much like you said, I envision that group probably meeting once a month with subcommittees or working groups meeting more frequently or on an as-needed basis. Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh, any questions, comments for our guests from the Saline Healthcare Improvement Task Force?
While you've worked on a number of aspects, which I think are great, that we need to move forward on with some other aspects, I do feel that some individuals felt that this group was going to come up with, like you had just mentioned, a brick and mortar solution for our city. And I think we need to understand that that is a great long-range goal, but whether we can achieve that or not couldn't happen. And so I appreciate it. And what do you think about that in terms of what would you recommend moving forward, that we should continue or should we?
As far as brick and mortar?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a brief story about something that's going on in the UP right now. It will give you a perspective on the status of healthcare as far as healthcare organizations. A hospital is closing, being converted to a community clinic. It is the only ER in that community for 60 miles. On a good day, that's 1 hour to the hospital and another hour for that EMS agency to return to service in their community. We sit in a place where we are 15 minutes from a level 1 trauma center, a comprehensive cardiac center, a comprehensive stroke center, a burn center, and a pediatric hospital. We have to understand that these organizations are still recovering from the financial impact of the pandemic. That's not only just the financial impact, but the loss of healthcare resources as far as staff. You cannot put a brick and mortar building in your community if you can't staff it. We see this, right, with hours of labs or urgent cares or whatever. Like, there just aren't enough bodies to fill those positions to make sure that they can keep those places open. As a long-term goal, I think really looking at what is necessary in this community to improve, access to healthcare as things recover and people reorganize and healthcare kind of bounces. Will it though? We don't know. They're still looking at the long-term impact that even business, non-healthcare businesses and, government entities are still working to recover from the impact of that 4-year span. So as a long-term goal, it's worth don't completely take it off the plate. This is from what I understand, from where I sit in the system, what I see, right? I wouldn't take it off the plate, but I would focus on the smaller things that you can do to improve access and awareness, promote wellness within the community, understanding that really, is it convenient to drive downtown Ann Arbor to go for healthcare? Yes. Parking is awful, traffic is awful, but we really have a world-class healthcare center. Personally, I just had a child who suffered a concussion, and I was fortunate enough to have access to one of the best neurosport clinics in the country. Not everybody has access to that stuff, and we have to appreciate the resources that we already have and think about how we can fill the gaps to improve access and awareness in the community.
And from access, you're meaning, like we've talked, People's Express or something, transportation, those type of things that we just don't currently have as a community.
Correct. How can we help them get there? And there's a pretty good list started of access to transportation resources in the repository. I just learned of another one, but I need to vet it a little bit more before we list it. So once I know more about it, I'll share it with Nicole and we can make sure that we get it in there. But sometimes I think the gap is that people just don't know what is available to them or how to access it. And we're not just talking about free rides for people with Medicare or Medicaid. We're talking about rides and access for everyone that is in need of transportation to get to their health and wellness appointments.
And just for me, there's been a lot of community involvement, and the members that have been part of it and have left and so forth, I think they'll also have an opportunity as we move into a transition to the wellness group, that they'll have the ability to not only participate yet again, but also to grow upon whatever aspects that they may have felt that, just didn't have enough time to be spent on those.
I agree, and I think they're like Mayor Marl said, I think there's opportunity for drop-in subject matter experts. You're talking about a specific thing, let's connect you with somebody in the community that is well-resourced in that thing and help you guys make good decisions about how to execute whatever that idea is. Then they don't have to commit to a 1, 2, or 3, whatever the term will be, but they can give you their resources based on the time they have available. I think you'll get more participation, more volunteers if it's kind of set up in that manner, where it's like a ad hoc or a, Like a drop
agree,
in.
and that was kind of with domestic abuse and such that we were discussing, that those resources are out there. We just need to figure out how to bring them here,
Yes.
be able to afford that. So
Yes.
thank you very much for your help that you've done, and looking forward to how we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice, any additional questions? And then I have one question for you. Do you believe a draft of the repository may be available for council to review at our next meeting on April the 1st?
Yeah, sure.
Very good, please.
So I don't have any comments about this, but I am just going to say out loud, and maybe we talk about this in the discussion portion so that we don't take Caitlin's time anymore of this, but I am a little concerned about the hastiness in which we're putting forth requesting applications from folks for a committee that I haven't, or a task force that I feel like we're not thinking through this thoroughly. I feel like we should all sit down and have a better, I know we've had some one-on-one conversations here and there, but I feel like, especially based on these recommendations, that we need to, and from conversations that I've had with Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mr. Gearbaugh was in these conversations as well, when it comes to the wanting to do wellness from a domestic violence standpoint. We had some meetings with the director of Safe House. I think it's bigger than, let's put another task force together. I think we should have a vision from council on what we want that to look like from all of us, because I think we all have different things that we've been talking about, and I think we should all put our heads together and talk about that. So I would actually request either a mini work session or something like that before we start putting that out to the community and inviting community members in, because I don't want to set the community up for something that they didn't expect, or for, I don't want to set us up for failure. I think there's a lot that we can do with this, and I think it's a great opportunity, but I would like to sit down at least once more and have a conversation based off of this and based off of some of the additional conversations before we invite the community in to join another task force.
So I would offer a compromise, noting how difficult it is to solicit applications from quality people to serve on any board or commission, let alone a task force. I would like to move forward with requesting interested parties fill out an application at the present time. However, I would see no problem, and I think it's actually probably a very good idea, if everyone's schedules permit, to maybe have an hour to a 45-minute work meeting in advance of our next regular meeting to sort of finalize a vision and a focus for said task force or initiative. My issue is delaying accepting applications will only delay this process another month or 2 months. It is, quite frankly, onerous to get people to fill out that application. And so the sooner we can start that process, the better. Then we have a quality pool of candidates we can draw from. But I think your suggestion is well taken, which is if there's consensus from this body, let's meet in advance of the next meeting, finalize sort of a vision and focus for said group, and then it can likely be launched at the second meeting in April, or at the first meeting at May at the very, very latest.
And maybe we invite those community members who have submitted applications to join in on that work meeting. Perhaps they come in with some ideas. Okay.
Definitely.
I'm amenable to that for
Okay.
sure.
Well, let me get Councilmember Harmount's questions and comments, and then we'll see if there's consensus to have a work meeting on that topic at our next regular meeting, prior to our next regular meeting on April the 1st. Okay, Councilmember Harmount?
Thank you so much for such a thought-out presentation. I really like the idea of the Wellness Resource Repository. It's really important for us. I know sometimes the awareness is not there, and I love that you're bringing that to light. Connecting, intercommunity connection is really important. I think it's going to tie in with our overall strategy to have a more connected community, so I really appreciate that. There was a comment about the fillable idea form. What is your vision for that? Where would that form, what type of ideas would we be soliciting, and how would we be gathering, what's your vision for that?
I think what my suggestion would be, once you find space for the repository digitally on the city's website, have a space on that landing page that people can fill. It's just a brief fillable form, their name, their contact information, and maybe a open text box where they can say, I know about this resource, or actually the contact for this resource is this, those kind of things. Most of those fillable forms dump to like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, and then it would be somebody's job to just monitor it and make sure it gets added and updated. I think that's probably the best way to do it. because then it's right there, it's right in front of their faces, it's easy to access. And I don't see where you would necessarily want to create like a separate city, a public-facing email for the task force to be, for people to be able to send. I think the fillable form kind of contains it a little bit, makes it brief, and, it's limited in character count, and they can just, but their contact information is there, so whoever is getting the information off of the spreadsheet can follow up if they have questions or need to get more information, rather than inundating an inbox with, emails. It's a little more organized.
If there was one thing that's not on this list that you could be doing right now, that would be like a low-cost, high-impact thing, what would it be?
Capitalize on your social media channel to promote what's going on in the community from a wellness standpoint. There's an event going on, share what's going on at the farmer's market, share when there's a blood pressure clinic at the senior center, talk about, groups that are getting together to walk around the community, whatever you can do to just promote what's already going on. I think that's an easy first step to just creating awareness about what's going on, what already exists in the community.
Thank you so much for your efforts.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmont. Clerk Rowe, could you remind me, what are the topics of discussion there's a tentatively scheduled work meeting on April the 1st and the 15th?
Budget.
Those are held for budget, okay. Well, let's do this, if you'll indulge me, Councilmember Rice. When we get to the second item under discussion, it is specific to additional work meetings and budget discussions. So let's hash out then when we want to meet to follow up on the budget, if there's consensus to do that, when we could meet to discuss a wellness initiative. And then I think there was also a desire, although I think it will likely wait until late April or May, to talk about some broader economic development strategies in the community. You good with that? Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Roxanne, Bethany, thank you very much. Appreciate your work and your time this evening. Okay, we are going to transition then to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion.
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearbow to approve is submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to unfinished business, item 24-39, ordinance number 863, marijuana medical dispensary and retail curbside pickup. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Community Development Director Harrington and to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 863, marijuana medical dispensary and retail curbside pickup.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, simply to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbow. I'll get you on the next one, Councilmember Harmont. Mr. Harrington, we discussed this at the last meeting, but do you want to provide a brief obligatory statement for the public's benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the last meeting, we had two versions of the ordinance, one that strictly prohibited, one that allowed with some moderate regulations. Just to recap, we're in kind of an anomaly in the fact that we have not allowed it based on a site plan condition. The condition of all those site plans is they could not have curbside pickup until the city resolved it via ordinance, which is what this ordinance will do. No other city from our research has regulated it in any way. Most don't even mention it, or if they do, they just mention that it's specifically allowed. There's no reports talking to Police Chief Radzik of issues or widespread knowledge of theft or anything else that occurs with curbside pickup. Quick Google search, I could find issues with delivery drivers, but nothing related to curbside pickup. From traffic perspective, they're not known, curbside in general is not known to cause any specific traffic considerations. We have the parking addressed in the ordinance itself by counting it towards the allowed parking, but it's not a bonus space. It doesn't count for or against anything else. It seems like a relatively reasonable ordinance to allow 5 spots per parcel that engages in this. And then just as a reminder, we would allow curbside pickup at non-marijuana dispensaries based on the current text of our ordinance.
Very good. Are there questions for Director Harrington before we advance a motion to either adopt or reject? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. Just to clarify, these are cash-only transactions happening outside of the building.
So the very nature of that, it depends on the dispensary from my understanding. I believe some of them have debit machines, which effectively operate as ATMs, but I believe they give you your cash and change because it has to round to $1 because it's an ATM effectively. And then, yes, I believe that there would be a cash transaction. Otherwise, the dispensaries have informed us that they would provide a security guard that walks to and from the car, essentially, with the bud tender is the name that they use.
Okay. because we do not offer, as we talk about curbside service, and you can go to Bush's or to whatever store and get curbside service, even including liquor, you're not paying for that outside of the store at your vehicle. So I do see that there is a difference, and I just want to understand that because that transaction is happening in advance in the business. They're just delivering the items to your vehicle. So it's not a transaction happening at your vehicle. So I do see them to be completely different. I don't know if others see it that way, but currently that's how I see it. And I'm very uncomfortable with cash transactions outside of the business. The fact that they're talking about using armed guards just, I think, enhances that idea to me. We don't go to Bush's and pick up our groceries and have an armed guard. We don't go to CVS to pick up our prescription and have an armed guard. So I feel as though if they're recognizing that there could be an issue by having an armed guard present, it's something that maybe we should be taking into consideration.
Additional questions for the Community Development Director, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Regarding the 5 spaces and handicap, this came up as an issue I just saw recently this weekend. Do we require in our code that the closest spaces have to be handicap?
So the handicap issue is not a zoning code issue. I believe it's a larger engineering ADA issue, if I'm correct. I think Ms. Humphris might have a better understanding of that than I do. But the ADA spots are kind of in a different state requirement. It's a building code requirement, actually, I believe. I don't think it falls in the zoning code.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, though, that we identify 5, that there isn't a way for them to reassign those spaces for pickup.
No, that would be a violation of their site plan anyways, because they showed it on both of them show available ADA parking on their site plans.
So when they say pickup, it has to be a well, that's going to be issued. They could identify a handicap space as pickup, but only if you're a handicapped individual, correct?
Right, that would be how that process would fall. I sincerely doubt that they would choose to do that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions before we vote on the motion to simply acknowledge receipt? Councilmember Rice?
I just want to comment on the security issue. I don't think we can have it both ways because we've said that we are concerned about security, and so they addressed it by saying that their security guard would walk out, and now we're saying that having a security guard walk out gives the perception that it is more dangerous. So I think we need to listen to the business owners here and their experience. They have another shop in Hazel Park, and they have the same option. I just clicked through it. They have the same option to do curbside, and I highly doubt that a business owner would want that option had they been having troubles in another town. So I'm leaning on the business owner here and what they think is best to improve business. And I'm looking less at, sort of perception of safety and whatnot.
Thank you. If there's no additional questions for staff, we'll vote on the motion to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 863?
Move to adopt.
Acknowledge and not adopt.
I'm going to take Rice as the mover to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. Is there additional discussion on the motion? Mr. Lesh.
Well, I have to say, I was always uncomfortable with the whole idea of recreational marijuana in the state of Michigan anyway, but unfortunately that issue has already been resolved by the state of Michigan. So, I mean, at this point, all of our current surrounding communities have essentially allowed this to happen. So if we are the only holdout within this part of Michigan, I don't see it other than making a public statement that, yes, we do not like it. Well, I'll make a public statement in that I'm not a fan of the use of marijuana, but that's just a personal preference. There are obviously a lot of people in the state of Michigan who enjoy the use of marijuana, and they voted it in as a state law. So at this point, I feel we should probably just go ahead and go with the flow.
Thank you. Additional comments on the motion?
Yes, I have a comment.
Please.
So there's a precedent already set across the state. This is pretty standard across the state. We are not voting on whether or not to approve dispensaries. That's already been approved in the state, in the city. We are voting to support our business partners within the city and also support consumers that may or may not have, like, ADA issues or, mobility issues. So with that being said, have already spoke to the chief. The chief does not have any safety concerns with curbside pickup. For that reason, I would be voting in favor.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmon. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
So what I want to understand with this is we have two scenarios. We have standalone dispensaries that it's their property. So the people coming on for curbside are coming onto their property. Now, we also have shopping center dispensaries, which overlap with other businesses. And we currently do offer curbside at our one dispensary that is in a shopping plaza. And that one is a little bit different in that it has a very sprawling parking lot. We're going to be talking about a dispensary now on the west side, a potential new dispensary that shares a very small space parking lot with a dance studio and such. And so you're commingling different types of businesses there in the parking lot. And I really want to be thoughtful in what we are doing, in what is going to be transacting in that parking lot as we have young children walking through it, going to their dance classes and such. I want to be very thoughtful about this because once we do it, we're not going to be able to change back. It's not a switch you turn on and off. And obviously, I urge people to be very thoughtful in what they're doing. And yes, we allow dispensaries in our community. We have. We were very deliberate in saying we did not want curbside service when we established our dispensaries. The one dispensary in our community that does have curbside service was an oversight in the planning process. It was, the I's were not quite, dotted all the way through. Otherwise, we would not be at this point right now. We had said no to curbside service. And so that door opened a little, and now we are just swinging it all the way open, and I'm very concerned about it.
If I could just make one point of clarification, the exact condition language on the Planning Commission findings was that no curbside would be allowed until the city established an ordinance as such. Not all dispensaries on their preliminary site plans for some, finals for others, showed curbside pickup at all. So that's where the discrepancy came in, is that some had shown it. It wasn't a formal ordinance. If they wanted to add it later, we would have liked it to be shown. There was a very nuanced conversation there. It was not definitively no or definitively yes. It was not no curbside pickup. It was no curbside pickup until the ordinance has been established. I think that helps paint the Planning Commission pictures a little bit better, but Mr. Gearbaugh was also in attendance at those meetings.
Yeah, and I'd say that's a very broad interpretation of it. I would think that the individuals kept wanting it on there. It was the last one or two that we said more specific about whether an ordinance was developed. So there was more hesitation at any kind of curbside. But I have a question, but I'll let.
Please, no, go ahead.
Ben, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon raises a good question about a parking lot. So is there a possibility of putting a limited number of footage from the building or from the entrance to which a parking space could be
I don't see any particular issue with saying that they must be within 300 feet of the building. The requirement in the ordinance, as shown before you too, requires them to identify it on a site plan for us. It would fall under the purview of an administrative review, but if for whatever reason they're putting it, in front of the dance studio, for example, in the one particular example at 813, I would say, well, I find this objectionable. I'm bringing it to the Planning Commission, which is my right under ordinance. And then the Planning Commission would be the deliberative body to decide, no, you can't have your 5 curbside or your 2 curbside or whatever it might be in front of the dance studio. So there are other paths to ameliorate that issue.
I just, when she mentioned that, it just brings the issue of that potentially the one where high society is. Fortunately, they have them right outside the building, which I know they probably want it for security. But if you really wanted to, you could move them all the way up to the front, up to Michigan Avenue. So for me, I think that's an issue that you're saying that if this was to be disputed, it could be addressed?
Right, so if they provided spots on a site plan that seemed objectionable, yes, I would say that putting them next to Michigan Avenue in that particular example provides no practical purpose for the term curbside pickup. I mean, if you really think about what the activity is, why as a business would I want to walk to the end of my parking lot rather than have it right outside my door, which is the convenience for me and you as the customer.
Well, we know people like to be able to drive up quick and pick up stuff, so I could argue with you on that one, too. But for me, is understanding in that situation, the appeal would be, or they have to, in this ordinance, identify where those 5 spots are going to be.
Yeah, and it's up to 5 too. There's no, you don't have to have 5. You can have
Right.
up to 5, and then it counts towards your required parking effectively. And again, this is not an issue that's been identified by the traffic engineers of America, so.
So then we go back to our 3 properties. They have to identify that, or what will happen with this ordinance once we adopt it?
So it's under our Chapter 22, which means that the nonconformity question isn't necessarily a question, although we could still be challenged on that. But they would have to provide us a site plan, or the similar, just draw on the site plan. They previously provide us where they intend on having these spots. And if it seems acceptable within the intent of what the Planning Commission approved, then I am within my rights to administratively approve it because it's not a material change to the site. But if that's another issue that the Planning Commission would like to specifically address, we can have that as a discussion item at our next meeting if you'd like those site plans brought back to you for approval of those spaces.
Yeah, for me, it is being on Planning Commission and understanding the membership that is there. How this proceeds was the concern about being able to put the curbside in place, and wasn't really, I don't think, an issue that they were really considering. This basically just came to council and basically deferred it to us. So I can't really say yes or no for the rest of the members of council, of Planning Commission, but I do know we brought this issue up as one of the things of community concern. We don't, maybe every other community does something different, but we are Saline, and we can, based on this law granted to us by the state, make our own conditions. So I just have a concern with the cash transactions. The other one we haven't talked about is delivery. We said no to delivery, and I would think that would be more beneficial than necessarily having curbside. So that's a consideration in the future.
Mr. Seal?
I'm not that familiar with curbside pickup because I personally don't use it, but I am familiar with the fact that in most of these parking lots, when you pull in, it says this space is reserved for curbside pickup, and this is location number 1, 2, 3. So when you call the business and say, hey, I'm outside to pick up my groceries, my lumber, my marijuana, my whatever, I'm in parking spot number 3, so could you, otherwise, how would they know where to deliver this, whatever product it is they're going to try to deliver? So I think by default, a lot of these places that do curbside have sort of a reserved spot that's where they try to identify so people can call in and say, I'm at location number so-and-so, so they know where to go to deliver whatever product it is you're trying to deliver.
Right, and again, these aren't, I didn't have a regulation to model this after because I simply can't find another one, but I did add that as a specific condition in that ordinance too. You have to identify the spots. For the sake of the businesses not contesting with our incidental sign ordinance, I have them as, they don't count towards your incidental signs. They can't be illuminated, so we have that addressed too. You have to have the signs marking the spaces as well.
Additional comments before we vote. Councilmember Rice.
I think a key here is what Mr. Harrington just said, is that he has the discretion to decide essentially where that space is. You know, if they move it 2 spaces down directly in front of the dance studio, of course, you know, your gut is going to say that's not appropriate. And the site owner has the discretion to fight that and bring it to Planning Commission. So I think this isn't a there's still gray area here. This isn't black and white. It's not a free-for-all. We're not just giving everybody permission to, you know, walk around their parking lots and drop stuff off inside people's cars. This is going to be a very specific, and these parking lots are small too, so they're going to have to very strategically think about where they want their curbside parking, and you're going to have that conversation with them. And I think that's a key to this, is that this isn't, like I said, this isn't a free-for-all. They're going to be strategic about this, and the businesses are not going to want their customers, you know, at the back of their parking lot either. From their own safety aspect, I'm sure they probably only have 1 or 2 bud tenders on hand at a time anyway, so you wouldn't want your store to be unsecure while you're walking out. So I again, am just not super concerned with the safety of this or the optics, because I think there are still ways that we can make this work for the business and for the community as far as optics goes.
Thank you. All right, unless there are additional discussion points, we're going to proceed to vote. We have a motion on the floor moved by Rice, seconded by Harmount to adopt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much. We move on to new business item 24-50, ordinance number 864, water service. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Engineer Humphreys and to acknowledge the first reading of ordinance number 863, water service.
Move to acknowledge and to acknowledge.
Very good, and assuming this motion, well, regardless of whether it passes, it will come back for additional consideration at a future meeting, I believe on April 1st. Is that correct, Engineer Humphreys?
Yes, hello.
Very good. I got to get a second. Excuse me. Is there a second to Mr. Gearbaugh's motion to acknowledge and acknowledge?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dylan. I'll get you on the next one, Mr. CEO. Please, Engineer Humphreys.
Okay, so this is about an existing water service ordinance. I'm not sure, I don't have the history on why or when this was adopted, but my understanding it's been this way for a very long time here in Saline. And with the fact that the homeowner owns their water service all the way from their house, all the way underneath our road to past the curb stop, and then which the curb stop is typically located like right at the right-of-way line, right at the sidewalk line. That's the shutoff valve. And then the water main continues to, or the water lead continues to the water service connection underneath the road itself. As you can see from one of the attachments here, it was one of the first things I did when I started here was took it to the Ordinance Review Committee to talk about changing that ownership, and which we talk about some of the good reasons why to own the curb stop would be so we have control to turn on and off the water to somebody's house. Right now it would be trespassing, and more importantly to be able to control the means and methods of restoring the road, protecting our road surface. And it gives us a clear point of delineation of ownership. And so when we took this to the Ordinance Review Committee back in, it must have been 2022, one of the concerns is that the city, if we change ownership, is taking on more assets. And one of the big things with this upcoming lead and copper rules is that we, the city, have to verify the service, the type of material at this curb stop. We have to actually verify it in 3 locations: inside the house, which we luckily had recently done a meter change-out program and got all of that data as part of that program. The second location is at the curb stop, which is what we're talking about here tonight. And then the third location is actually at the connection underneath the road. If you were to just fix a curb stop box, it would be probably, by the time you pay for equipment and labor and the box itself, it would probably be $500 to $600 a curb stop. The box itself, the actual metal box that goes around the curb, is only a $70 part. Most of your fee is in the equipment on site, if you have a Vector truck or if you need to excavate down, and the labor on site. We recently got a grant to help us with this lead and copper, so we're getting $600,000 from the state of Michigan to dig these up. So now is the perfect time for us to take over ownership of these, because if we find a broken one in this process, we can replace it for $70 as opposed to $600. And so that's why it's something that's been out there, like we need to do, and now is the perfect time to do it. So that's why you're seeing it now. And I guess I'll open it up to questions.
No, that was good. To give you a little bit of perspective, I worked on this issue a little bit in my first year as a council member in 2009 and noted deficiency. So yes, this has been a long time coming, but as you just articulated, because of the new lead and copper rules, it makes it even more timely and appropriate to move forward. So I just note that because as a way of indicating that not only will I vote in favor of the innocuous motion tonight to acknowledge, but to add a subsequent motion, hopefully on April the 1st, to adopt this new ordinance 863. Appreciate your work on this.
Okay.
Are there questions for the city engineer? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, when we said the 600,000, the grant, whatever, we don't anticipate that many boxes to have to be replaced, correct?
No, that $600,000 is actually the cost as part of the lead and copper rules, and I do not know the exact percentages, but we have to physically verify a certain percentage of our total existing water service leads. So we have about 3,000 accounts, give or take. So we have to verify a certain number of those, and DPW Director Searle could give you the direct amount of that we have to verify. So that is actually for that program. And we're doing those for between $600 and I think $1,000 a home. And so I think that's we could probably do some math to figure out about how many homes that we're doing. So that is a mandated program by the state of Michigan, and that's what that money is being utilized for.
And that's for homes built before, I believe, 1989, correct?
It is. They're requiring us, so and then it's a randomized sample of all of those homes. That's how the state got to that number that we have to do as a water system owner, yes.
From my own experience, this will be beneficial to the taxpayers because even in my home was newer, when the valve failed, it was a $4,000 expense, and that was 15 years ago. So
Yes.
I think this is a great move for us and beneficial to basically everyone. So
I agree.
Very good. Additional questions, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
So can you just clarify, so the homeowner will still own from their home to the curb stop?
Yes, that's true. And there is a diagram that was attached. It looks like this. I'm not sure what page of the, that kind of shows what the proposal is. So yes, the homeowner would still own all of everything inside the house except for the meter, which is city-owned. Everything coming out of the house up into that curb stop. So if it were leaking on the homeowner's side of the curb stop, that would still be the homeowner's responsibility. And then the curb stop itself would be the municipality's responsibility, and then the curb stop underneath the roadway would all be under the municipality's responsibility.
can you define curb stop?
The curb stop is the shut-off valve that's located typically at the property line. And so there's a curb stop, which it truly is just a valve that you turn on and off, but it's 5 feet below grade or 6 feet. Your water main is buried below grade to prevent freezing. So is your water service line. So it comes with like a key to turn. So you turn it. It comes with an above ground, and then the apparatus that allows that key to stay in place is called the curb stop box, and that's what comes up to the top. And most often that is the piece of item that needs fixing is the curb stop box. And I think Councilmember Gerbach's example, the actual valve was broke, which is an even more expensive fix.
So now, if there is an issue with water going into the home, would the homeowner then contact the city to come and turn it would be the city's responsibility then now to turn that valve?
That is typically the city is still called right now to locate that. I mean, we're still being, it's odd because I think most municipalities do own that curb stop, so most plumbers are used to relying on the city. Most cities do control operation of that curb stop, yes.
I think that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, my curb stop is unknown where it's at. Every once in a while, DPW, if they're coming out flagging, they're like, hey, by the way, here it is, and they'll mark the sidewalk. But it obviously fades over time. And so mine is sort of like, you hope you don't need it to turn that valve anytime quickly. And so I think having an understanding, because that was an issue when we had somebody out at our house. He was like, well, where's your curb stop? I'm like, don't know. He's like, well, you're going to have to contact your city because they're going to have to identify it and that sort of thing. So it seems like we're already doing that piece, and now we're just going to sort of officially own it.
Yes, I would agree. We're already doing that piece. I think the difference is that we now send the property owner a bill for that piece. And so some of that financial liability is now going to be the city's.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then this also helps us to control the tearing up of our roads and making sure that they're rebuilt to our standards and not having somebody just put down plywood.
Yes, that was another benefit of owning the stuff that's under our road. It's to our benefit to have control of items that go underneath the roads that we control.
Okay.
That was a benefit to this.
And do we have any idea of what the long-term cost would be? I know you said approximately like $100 a piece, but is there any long-term liability costs that right now we're not looking at so that we're going to have to like look at in the future, or is it just?
I think it is an asset that ultimately we will have costs with in the future. One of the difficulties of projecting the actual costs associated with this ordinance adoption is that unlike many of our assets, we don't have an accurate inventory. But as part of this lead and copper program, we will be collecting inventory. So we're slowly building the inventory. So doing some of those projections are difficult. I do think there is a cost associated with it, but it's something like the rate. The nice thing about water is it's a self-funded fund. You have rates going in and expenses going out, so it just becomes an expense item that's shared by all of the ratepayers of the system, as opposed to one homeowner gets hit with that big bulk of the expense of it. In a system like this, it makes sense. So I think that yes, there will be an additional liability in the future with the water fund, but that's the beauty of the water fund being self-sufficient, doing rate studies on that and such.
Thank you very much for all that information.
Councilmember Rice.
And we do currently have a fee if you require the city to come out and turn on and turn off and turn on at the curb stop if you're doing plumbing work in your house, correct?
I book.
And will
not
that
familiar
will still continue for
Yes.
personal homeowners that need, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know a year ago or so, they couldn't find ours.
Yes,
So we didn't get
very
charged
common.
for it. We just froze the pipes instead. But yeah, I do recall that there was a fee for that, and then that will continue.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Any additional questions before we vote? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just one other, now that we're going to be owning all those valves, is it anticipated as part of our water management that we would be exercising those valves?
Curb stops are not typically exercised in the same frequency as mainline valves, so I would expect, though, that typically the municipality wants to control turning on and off, like Councilmember Rice was just stating, that typically that's something that, like, plumbers are kind of conditioned, you have to call the municipality first, and sometimes municipalities give plumbers permission to turn those valves, but typically that's something that the municipality does. But it's not something that would go into your typical exercising program.
Because some of those valves, I mean, those are also reaching the age of 50, 60,
Yes.
70 years, and not understanding what point in time from now would those need to be replaced, so.
Right, and I do agree that that's very common. What both members said was that you can't find it, and a lot of times it's just because it's buried just a little bit. And quite frankly, DPW using the Vector truck, we own a Vector truck. You can hydro excavate, get down to it, and and we have this part on the shelf. It's something DPW can do in a matter of a couple hours sometimes, as opposed to a private homeowner buying someone with an excavator, and that's where it runs into the thousands of dollars. So that's where I think it's just like economies. It's a win-win.
Thank you.
If there are no additional questions or comments, we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge and to acknowledge. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-51, Stormwater Engineering Services. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Engineer Humphreys and to approve or not to approve the proposal from Spicer Group to proceed with MS4 permit compliance in the amount not to exceed $50,500.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by CO. This is pretty straightforward, but Engineer Humphreys, do you want to make some brief comments for the public record?
I sure will. So another one of our essential infrastructure systems is our stormwater system, which is what collects rainwater in our street systems from some ponds that we own. And since we own the streets, the city of Saline owns streets, we also are the proud owner of a MS4 permit with the state of Michigan, which stands for Municipal Separated Storm Sewer System. I gave a little bit more background in the memo. The stormwater rules have really increased over the last 20, 25 years or so. It's a newer regulation, but as they've ramped up, they've implemented things. I think we pulled our first MS4 permit in the early 2000s. The state has more staffing available for this program now, and there's all kinds of things, everything that's in this proposal that are attached are things that we, the municipality, as part of our permit have to do. And our permit was last renewed in 2008, and we are in the process of trying to renew that permit with the state of Michigan and getting into full compliance with the regulations. And this proposal is basically to assist us with that and to kind of take it a step further and get us ready for an actual stormwater model and update our kind of inventory and assets of our stormwater system. This money was budgeted in this fiscal year and next fiscal year. It's something I anticipate taking over the next 2 fiscal years, and we did put them in the projections for these coming years. So I guess with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Any questions for the city engineer? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
The only question I had was that when I was looking through this, that I had noticed was that when it talked about services not included, it talked about GIS mapping. So are we going to be doing any kind of that on our own? Or?
Yes, that's and the reason is that, so we basically, we're kind of using 2 engineering firms, and so that's how, and Spicer is not the engineering firm that is doing our GIS, OHM is. So that's why Spicer did not include it in these services. It is included in OHM's annual services because we are already tracking some of this data that we need, which is kind of cool. We went through the MS4 permit requirements. Like catch basin cleaning is one thing that we have developed an app for and are utilizing as we speak. DPW crews have been out there doing these last couple of weeks and using our app. So, but all the GIS services were developed by OHM. And that's already part of our ongoing budget item for GIS.
Oh, fantastic, great. I just want to make sure it was being done.
Yes.
Populate that system.
Additional questions, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, it talks about assisting you all with compliance. Are we out of compliance on anything, or is it just?
Yes, honestly, when I was having trouble locating the permit this past summer, we reached out to Eagle, and Eagle promptly sent me a violation letter instead of helping me out with what I asked for. So
Sounds familiar.
yes, so we got but we're in compliance now. I've responded to that within the 30 days, and this is part of kind of getting us up into compliance. So what had been missing was we had not submitted our biannual report since 2017.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? Appear to be none. There's a motion on the floor, then moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your work this evening, Engineer Humphries. Have a good evening. We move on to the next three motions, all pertaining to the Saline Area Fire Department. First up is 2452, FY25 Operating and Capital Improvement Budget for the Saline Area Fire Department. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the February 24th, 2024 memo from Recording Secretary Joyce, and to approve or not to approve the proposed Saline Area Fire Department Operating and Capital Improvement budget at a cost of $711,631, with the intent of funding to go through the city's 1 mil special assessment and or the city's general fund.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Moved by Gearboss to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Is the city manager on the line?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Do you want to begin, City Manager O'Toole, with some brief comments, and I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. This recommendation came out of the most recent meeting of the Budget Committee, which I was unable to attend. So representing the City of Saline were the City Manager and then the other liaison to the Fire Department, which is Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. So City Manager O'Toole, you may begin, and then we'll turn it over to Councilmember Dillon if she has some additional remarks.
Thank you. We did receive originally a proposed budget from the fire chief that was substantially higher than it is now. At a meeting of the fire board, it was determined that each municipality should send a representative or two to meet again, ideally representatives that had a background or knowledge of their respective communities' finances. And in doing that, we were able to kind of come to a more agreeable term in terms of overall operations. So this does reflect an increase of approximately 15% over the previous year. It also reflects an increase nearly doubling the capital improvement contribution, though I will say, just from my perspective, that capital improvement contribution was low for what the needs of the organization are. Again, albeit not well-articulated needs at this time, but largely known in terms of general equipment and facilities updates that are coming down the line. This is overall, the operating and capital need are greater than the 1 mil assessment, so this will require the use of general funds. Again, we have historically used some or all of the general fund portion as payment, and that trend won't continue.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any additional remarks?
I think the city manager did a good job of explaining. Yes, I did have an opportunity to sit in on the second budget meeting as the mayor was unavailable to attend. He is the chair of the committee. He is chair of the finance and budget preparation group.
I am not.
And so.
I am not.
You're not chair?
No.
Of that group? No, you're just the member of it. So he was a part of formulating the first budget. So I don't know what formulas were into that part of it. Like I said, when it came to the board, there were certain pieces of it that we had asked for some clarification of. There were some things that went down, some things that went up, some things that were deleted. And so I think this is sort of where we came as a compromise moving forward. And so at this point, I think that it is, this is the best budget we're bringing forward at this point. I think the fire department is undergoing some internal changes as far as procedures, and so I would expect that moving forward in future years, our budget will look a little bit different.
Questions for the city manager or Mayor Pro Tem? Or I might be able to address them as well. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Over the last couple of years, we've had some additional requests that were outside of the original budget, and a number of those were related to safety and those aspects and issues. Are we achieving that in this budget to address those concerns that, for me, are one of the priorities, that we're accomplishing the needs of not only protecting our fire department men and women that are working, or individuals, I should say, but also that they feel that this is being adequately addressed within these budgets.
City Manager O'Toole, would you like to begin?
Yes, I do feel that under this current budget, the immediate safety needs are being adequately met. Chief Spurley has developed a strategy of changing out a certain number of turnout gear in total each year so that they do not get into a position again in the future of having an exorbitant number of those expiring at any given time. And this does also account for one key piece of equipment being purchased that is a defibrillation device, I believe.
Yeah, I believe I remember hearing that.
Yeah. So all in all, this budget meets those immediate needs. I will say another action that has been taken by the fire board at this time is to assign representatives from each community to research and present a recommendation, I presume, on a debt issuance for the fire department that would look more comprehensively at its existing equipment and facilities needs.
Which brings my next question. The capital equipment request of $60,000, I believe, for a pickup truck or some type of vehicle. Having read the notes from the Saline Township that were in the Saline Post regarding the need of a fire truck, which exceeds $1 million potentially, I'm glad that you're looking at that type of a financing, but is this vehicle something that is needed right now, or is there, and how is that vehicle actually being used?
So that same question came up during the fire board meeting, I believe from our very own Councilmember Dillon. The response at that time, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Dillon, but the chief felt that that was just a placeholder for any possible equipment that could need to be replaced in time. I don't believe that there is an immediate need to replace the truck. It's just kind of a projected activity. Similar to the city's finances, any purchase of that cost would still require approval of the fire board. So by adopting the plan, you don't, similar to our budget, you don't give carte blanche to purchase anything that is contained within the budget. The regular purchasing and procurement standards still exist.
Thank you, because that was one of my concerns. I would otherwise have separated the budgets out. And with that, do you feel anything else for us at this point in time? As you know, a 15% increase this year, do we anticipate that being a similar approach for the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, this is exactly why I really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of that debt issuance group. I believe, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I believe since I've started about 3.5 years ago, we've seen the overall fire department budget increase by almost 60%. And, you know, in that time, can I say that all plans have been accomplished or even necessarily that all the groundwork has been effectively laid? No, we still have a ways to go. What I'm more concerned about is not having those strategies in place before we incur any additional debt or continue to add to the budget in the future. So my priority in representing the city on that particular subcommittee group will be to ensure that the debt issuance adequately addresses the immediate and near-term needs of the fire department without being overly burdensome on the capital contributions of the groups.
And then lastly, have we addressed the, I would say, unfunded liabilities that address the retirement funds?
The SAFD is still making contributions in accordance with the corrective action plan that they have with the state of Michigan. That does call for, in future years, significant increases to that contribution over time. They have a small set aside, which is identified in this budget as committed employee liability, so about $194,000 that could be used to help pay towards those liabilities in the future. But I believe this could be another opportunity for the fire board to look at whether it makes sense to try and renegotiate the current corrective action plan or payment schedule to more normalize the costs over time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that's challenges that have been presented to the fire board in the past and have not been necessarily addressed. So whatever we can do to help move that forward. And I think we'll be talking about that in another motion later on. I appreciate all your work that you've done on it, and Ms. Coles, and also Councilmember Dillon. Thank you.
I would also note, which was discussed previously, I think at 2 separate fire board meetings, we are aware, City Manager, that there will likely be some additional dollars in this state budget to help jurisdictions, governmental jurisdictions, pay down post-employment benefits. So we have instructed the fire chief to work proactively with our state senator and state representative Felicia Brayback to see if the Saline Area Fire Department can qualify or apply for dollars in this upcoming state budget. Additional questions?
A question.
Please.
Do you feel, City Manager, do you feel that the training needs are addressed in the budget proposal?
Yes, I do. That is one line item we talked extensively about with the fire chief. He feels that we have the dollars necessary to do the mandatory trainings that are required. Obviously, if there were any turnover with firefighters, there would be a higher cost associated with that. But at this time, they are fully staffed, so he's mostly looking at maintaining education levels.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Then we have a motion on the floor simply to acknowledge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearbow to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lesh. Is there any additional discussion? Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-49, special assessment resolution number 1. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Treasurer Cole and to adopt or not to adopt resolution number 2449, Fire Protection Special Assessment District.
Move to acknowledge and to adopt.
Moved by Gearbow to acknowledge and to adopt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by CO. Treasurer Cole, this is a process we've used the last couple years, so we're not reinventing the wheel here, but do you care to make some obligatory remarks primarily for the public's benefit?
Yes, this resolution allows us to assess the special assessment that will then pay for the fire operating costs. It will be a little bit short, so we're looking at probably about $132,000 or $130,000 that will come from general fund. But this is the action that actually allows us to enact that special assessment.
Very good. Questions for the city treasurer? It's pretty straightforward. Any discussion on the motion? Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to acknowledge and to adopt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. New business item 24-53, amendment to the Saline Area Fire Department agreement. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the March 4th, 2024 memo from Recording Secretary Joyce and to approve or not to approve the amendment to the Saline Area Fire Department agreement.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearboss to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. I can make a few brief comments, and then if Ms. Dillon would like to add anything, she's welcome to do so. So I had noted probably about 2 years ago now a number of deficiencies with the intergovernmental agreement, the most pressing being the configuration of the board. There's no way to sugarcoat this, but it's clear that we have some board members who would prefer not to be members, but because of the office they hold, they are required by the intergovernmental agreement to be parties or voting members, excuse me, on the Saline Area Fire Board. So after numerous discussions and consultation with legal counsel for the Saline Area Fire Department, we broached a compromise which was unanimously approved by the board, which says that each governmental entity will still send 2 representatives and designate an alternate, that one of the members be an elected official, either a township trustee, township officer, township supervisor, mayor, or city council member, and that the other member may simply be an individual within that governmental jurisdiction. So we could appoint a private citizen who maybe had an expertise in budgeting, purchasing, managerial evaluations, risk mitigation, which I think could enrich the board. So again, the board took action at its most recent meeting, now requires action from the 4 governmental entities that make up the Saline Area Fire Department, and if approved, it will be acted upon again at the next regular meeting of the fire board, which I believe is our first meeting in April, which I think is the 3rd. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, anything else you would like to add as the second representative from the city of Saline?
No, I think that you did clarify what it is right now. The only thing that's changing is the qualifications to be a member of the board. And so each of the 4 municipalities will still have 2 representatives, and there will be a member at large also on that committee. And so I look forward to seeing what that dynamic looks like in the future. and who's going to be a part of that board from each of those municipalities.
I should note, too, assuming that the intergovernmental agreement amendment is adopted, it will require some revisions to the bylaws of the Saline Area Fire Department, because the bylaws stipulate that the officer positions, chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, can only be occupied by either the mayor or township supervisors. And since we're no longer requiring that the mayor or township supervisor be part of the board, it will open up the process to elect officers from any voting member of the Saline Area Fire Board. Questions? Mr. Gearbaugh.
As there really wasn't a red line or aspect of this, nothing else has changed in this agreement, or I was under the impression some of this was being cleaned up too, or am I mistaken?
These are the only substantive changes at this time.
Okay, because I know looking at this, again, as we've questioned, there's issues within this that I'm not so sure have necessarily been resolved. So at this point, this is just for the type of individual that serves on the committee, correct?
Correct. I would assume in the next 6 months to 12 months, there will be additional revisions recommended by the Fire Board to Lodi Township, Saline Township, York Township, and the City of Saline, specific to the intergovernmental agreement.
And there are no specific requirements. One of my concerns has been that I think the oversight of the, well, it is, the oversight for the past few years has not had individuals that were knowledgeable enough in administrative, accounting, or other aspects that would be required. And I'm hoping that as we move forward with this, that those type of positions and individuals with those kind of qualities are selected versus just another appointee.
That's the goal.
And is that actually part of this, or is it not clearly identified that way?
It's not clearly defined in the agreement, but every discussion we have had is predicated on the notion that we should be trying to solicit new talents to serve on the fire board that bring skill sets that are not currently possessed with the elected officials who represent the 4 respective municipalities. So again, looking for somebody who would have experience with accounting, managerial evaluations, purchasing, budgeting, financing, maybe even firefighting. I will likely move forward and appoint somebody who has, probably can assume who it is, an expertise and a 30-year plus vocation in risk mitigation, risk management. So yes, I think the goal is to get some new perspectives and skill sets that will overall improve the board and ultimately improve the department as a whole.
So council could appoint, if they wanted to, a treasurer or the city manager?
No, we cannot.
No, you cannot appoint staff.
Well, we cannot because they're not residents
Unless they're within
of
the, if they were
They would
in the
have to be
city, we could do
residents of
that.
the city.
That's one of my things, is that I think that's the type of leadership we're missing on this board at this time. Thank you.
And we did actually, that was a point that the mayor did bring up, that we actually originally had language in there. And because it really strictly pertained to the city of Saline, it didn't quite make it all the way up the hill.
Correct.
Okay.
Councilman Rice?
2 questions. The first, what was the, I know y'all voted on this at the fire board, what was the general discussion, general consensus? Were people amicable to this? They
Unanimous.
encouraged this?
Unanimous.
Okay. Second, so we'll just, this will just be like any other committee appointment by the mayor. You'll choose someone, bring it to council, and we'll vote on it.
Required to choose 2 people to serve on the Saline Fire Board and then to designate 1 alternate. And the requirement will be that at least one of those, at least one of the 2, the permanent representatives, one of them would need to be a member of this body. The second could also be a member of this body, but it could also be a private citizen with an additional expertise or perspective.
My question is, will it be brought to council for?
Definitely.
Oh,
Be part of the annual appointment process done in January.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Additional questions or comments? Discussion on the motion. It's been moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon, simply to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by CO to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. Is there any additional discussion? There is none. All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion is approved unanimously. Last action item of the evening is 24-54, Council Subcommittee Guidelines. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Manager O'Toole and to adopt or not to adopt the guidelines for the Policy Subcommittee and guidelines for the Finance Subcommittee, and to establish or not to establish the Council Policy Subcommittee and Council Finance Subcommittee.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to begin? This was an item that we got consensus on probably about a month back, and I was very impressed by how fast you and your staff were able to turn this around.
Yes, we last discussed this item at our first meeting in February of this year. The consensus at that time was that we should move forward with 2 subcommittees of council, one on policy, one on finance, with 3 council members each and at least 1 staff liaison. These guidelines also outlined that at the discretion of the members of those subcommittees, they can recommend to the council appointment of up to 2 citizen participants, ideally with it being based on subject matter expertise in a given area. I anticipate that the policy subcommittee will be slightly more active than the finance subcommittee. There is some additional guidance on the types of activities they will meet for, specifically around the finance subcommittee, the requirement that they meet at least twice to review the draft audit and the draft budget before it goes to council.
Very good. And I should add, because I did have a conversation with the city manager regarding this issue last week, assuming there's a subsequent motion to adopt and to establish, we'll likely appoint the members of the policy subcommittee and the finance subcommittee at our next council meeting. We will also designate one individual to serve as an acting chair, and then at the first organizational meeting of each, they can elect a permanent chair. And then, of course, as the city manager indicated, make a strategic decision as to whether or not they want to engage some external individuals to serve on subcommittees as well. I would ask that you recall an email that I sent you last week. I requested that each of you provide me a brief narrative indicating your preference as to whether you wish to serve on policy or finance. No guarantees that I can accommodate everyone's interests or desires, but I will try my very best to do so. And again, assuming the subsequent motion passes, I would need an email correspondence from each of you no later than 5 p.m. next Tuesday. Are there questions for the city manager? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just a couple. In terms of membership, it says these 3 members may not serve on any other subcommittee of the city. Are we defining subcommittee as specifically just these 2 committees?
Correct. It's just meant to imply that you can't be on both.
And what if there's a situation where one of the council members or whatever cannot serve on one of the other meetings and we have an opening?
A council opening?
Oh, well, not a council opening, but say one of the individuals cannot serve on either one of the committees. How will we fill or solve that problem? I'm talking about the ability for them maybe not to be able to meet or whatever at some point.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, that would be up to the committees. To me, that falls into like a committee participation or bylaws of the subcommittees themselves, which would be drafted by the individual subcommittees. Obviously, we have some base templates that we can work off of for those. But yes, our standard protocol is more than 3 absences removes you from an appointment.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure we had that because that has been a concern in the past. I'm looking forward for this. I think this is a good approach to try and address this. These concerns and moving forward will be very helpful for actually helping us build more better policies and then actually assessing the finance. So whatever we can do to accomplish this, thank you very much, Mayor and City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. I will also note that assuming the subsequent motion passes as part of the consent agenda at the next regular meeting, then will be a motion to dissolve our code review committee. And I will make contact again with the chair of that group and the other members to notify them in advance of said action, and maybe express to them that if there is a desire amongst any of those individuals to potentially participate on a council subcommittee, that they can communicate that via the city manager's office or through the city clerk. Are there additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. Just looking at the finance subcommittee, right now we have these running calendar year. Would it be better for it to be running fiscal year, so that it aligns with the way our budget is? Because if you have somebody that goes off in December, I mean, it just seems like it could be awkward for finance and audit.
I would say I did think of that. My only hesitation was if you lose a council person with an election, because the council terms are based on the calendar year.
Okay. And then are these all one-year terms?
Yes.
Just trying to understand. I'm looking at it more from the community aspect of members, of where we are. I know, because budgeting just sort of, you're coming in at an awkward time.
Yeah, City Manager, to my understanding is that we would make appointments to the 2 subcommittees, policy and finance, on an annual basis, likely at that first meeting in January.
Correct. And the terms run from January 1 to December 31st as these guidelines are written.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to sort of understand that. And I'm looking forward to this. I think that this is going to be, it's going to kind of speed the process through. It's going to be a little bit more pointed. I really respected what Code Review did for the city for many years. I think sometimes there was a disconnect between staff, Code Review, council, and we got bogged down in ourselves a lot. And I think this may serve the same purpose, but streamline the process.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the city manager? Okay, then we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by Harmont to acknowledge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to adopt, not to adopt, establish, or not establish?
Move to adopt.
And to establish,
And to
Councilman?
establish,
Okay,
yeah.
is there a second to that? Who is the second? Was that Lesh? Thank you, Chuck. Is there any additional discussion on the motion?
I'll just make a comment.
Please, we
that,
welcome that.
This is the exact structure that the school board has used forever, and they split it up exactly 3 and 3 in a similar, and it's worked very well for the school board for many, many years.
Very good.
And did we talk about what days these were going to be on Monday? We're going to meet on,
That would be for the individual subcommittees to establish at their organizational meeting. Any additional questions or comments? Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Rice, seconded by Lesh, to adopt and to establish. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Reports, announcements, and committee updates. So again, I'll start to my right and to my left tonight. Mr. Lesh, any reports or announcements you'd like to share?
Meeting will be this Thursday for Arts and Culture.
Okay, Mr. CO?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Just a couple of things coming up. On Wednesday, we were talking a lot about the fire department. On Wednesday, the fire department, the fire board specifically, will be holding interviews of candidates for the member-at-large position. That will begin at 5:30 at the fire station. The public is invited to attend if they so choose.
Okay, Mr. Gearbaugh, any reports or announcements? Committee updates?
Just a couple. The Historical Society had a annual meeting this past weekend and would like to encourage the community, if they're interested in participating or becoming a member of it. We're struggling, like all other groups, to gain more participants. And with the opening of the museum coming forward, we anticipate to have sheep again and some other things. So if we could have individuals that would like to become interested or participate, that would be great. Our risk management team will be meeting this Friday to review and talk with our city manager and going forward. And today we had the benefit of meeting with Mr. Harrington to discuss a community space downtown. And there will be another session with that, with the goal, I believe, of presenting something to the city April 15th, if I remember what he mentioned. The intention is to try and address some of the concerns and issues that have been being brought up by the public, and now moving the city forward in terms of, identifying what could be done, where maybe it could be done, and hopefully something that can be beneficial to our community to address the issue of downtown traffic, foot traffic, events, and so forth.
Very good. Councilmember Rice, any committee updates, reports, or announcements?
Yeah, I attended that same meeting with Mr. Yearbach. I thought it was a great conversation that drew from master plan conversations and lots of other conversations with the community to kind of put forth an idea that, just sort of gives us something to react to. So I look forward to seeing that in the near future. Parks Commission is busy, making connections with folks all around. We had a wonderful meeting at the senior center that the mayor hosted the Parks Commission during his coffee hour, and it was wonderful that almost the entire Parks Commission showed up, which I thought was great. And as the mayor may attest, there's a lot of energy behind what we're looking to work on over this next year. We have a couple of folks joining us in our meeting tomorrow, Friends of the Lakeland Trail and American Parks Commission, to talk about some trail development and some other opportunities throughout the year as well. The DEI committee has been invited to join the schools in some community forum/listening sessions coming up. I will not steal the thunder from the schools in their announcements, but they will be starting at the end of April throughout mid-May, and each session will focus on a different population within the city, some of the more underrepresented groups within the city, to talk about what some of our plans are from the schools and from the city, but mostly to hear from the community on what the needs are. So I really look forward to attending that. I'm very proud to have been invited to that. And I think these collaborations between the schools and the city are really going to be fruitful as we go forward in all of the activities that we're looking for, including the Parks Commission, upon which I sit, and this new upcoming community health and wellness initiative as well. So look forward to continuing these conversations.
Very good. Councilmember Harmount, any reports, announcements, or committee updates?
Yes, hi. The Historic District Commission met on Thursday, and we reviewed 3 different residents' requests, and all 3 were approved.
Very good.
Better.
Mr. Seal?
If I may,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I forgot. We met this morning with the Saline Area Senior Center, the board did, and then a group of us met again this afternoon with the schools as concerns the bond update. So we were encouraged. I think the Saline Area Senior Center was encouraged with the kinds of plans that the school seems to be putting forth at this moment. They've asked us to provide some feedback to them, so the board, I think, is going to have a special meeting between now and the first week in April, and then in the first week in April, hopefully, we're going to schedule a meeting for the general membership, if they desire to attend, to talk about what direction we're going to take in the future with the bond proposal. Yes.
Very good.
Just for a moment to ask a question, would you be willing to share those recommendations with all of us as we prepare this health and wellness committee or commission or whatever?
Certainly.
Because I really think that it's very important to take into account what the seniors are asking for, maybe what the schools are covering, and where we can help fill in some gaps.
Sure, be happy to do that, Nicole.
Thank you.
Probably not for a couple of weeks yet, till the board at least gets through, kind of muddling through what we intend to try and make of what the schools have offered.
Perfect.
Quickly, please.
Thank you. Please don't say quickly. Last week, Mr. CEO and I had the opportunity to spend 2 days in Lansing at the Michigan Municipal Government Capital Conference. It was a great opportunity. It was great learning for us. There was a lot of great breakout sessions that involved renewable energy, housing. Let's see, what else was there? There was unions. There were quite a few different breakout sessions, and it's always a great opportunity to meet with our legislators and also our government lobbyists. They always have some great information of what's coming down the pike, and so it was good to see some things. Saline was actually called out for the bill that's being worked on right now. I know that the mayor had spoken before the Senate recently about it, and it's creating it's changing current legislation so that our fire department could become a fire authority, which then would have some different rules attached to it, and it would be its own separate entity in classification. So they've been working diligently on that on our behalf, and there's just a lot coming down from Lansing. And so it's nice to know that there are people that are looking out for the local governments.
Thank you. City Manager O'Toole, I think you had a quick statement you wanted to share and maybe some additional announcements as well. She gone? Okay. We'll have the statement shared then at the subsequent meeting.
Yes.
Oh, are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I was asked to give a statement and maybe take a moment to speak about the Saline Area Light Tower concept. First, obviously, the city deeply appreciates hearing from our residents regarding any new or innovative ideas, especially those that help us to potentially meet our strategic goals like greater climate resilience. At this time, however, after consideration by staff and numerous conversations with city officials, there is no interest in moving forward with the SALT project. It has not been made a part of our 6-year capital improvement plan, and no funding has or is anticipated to be allocated to the project. I think we all are aware that the city has a myriad of high priority infrastructure projects that are already included in our capital improvement plan, and many of those, especially those in our water, sewer, and stormwater division, are already slated for funding and frankly are in the greatest demand for funding for the years ahead. So those projects will remain our focus for the immediate future.
Very good. Thank you, City Manager O'Toole. Additional work meetings and budget discussion. So first, and I articulated this at our most recent budget workshop, Mr. Lesh, since you were unable to be present, I would encourage you to make contact, if you haven't already, with the City Manager and City Treasurer's office so you can be caught up on the presentation, the excellent, very thorough presentation that was shared by staff a week ago. I was interested, and so is staff, to see if there's consensus at the dais to have another work session on the budget. If so, I would recommend that we do so at our next regular meeting on April the 1st, excuse me. So let me start, I'll start at the opposite end of the dais and work my way back towards Mr. Lesh. Councilmember Harmont, do you have a desire to have another meeting on the proposed 2025 budget?
I sure would be open to that on April 1st.
Okay, Councilmember Rice?
I'm amenable to that. I don't feel the need for it, but I feel like if everyone's amenable to it, then I will gladly join in.
Fair enough. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
I'm fine. I just would like to know from from City Manager and from Treasurer Cole, what would they like to focus on, if that would be more beneficial at that time?
Okay. Do you want to take that one real quick, Councilmember, or excuse me, you'd be a very good Councilmember. City Treasurer Cole?
Yes, at this point in time, we don't feel the need to necessarily have a work session. What we could do is incorporate the changes that were suggested at the last meeting and send that information all to you so that you could review the budget and individually come and make appointments if you had further questions.
Yeah, my thing is I do not want to discourage our new council members, and if we need to have that meeting and should have that meeting, there's no reason why not to have it.
Yep. Yep. I would echo those comments. I like to provide, especially the newest council members, an opportunity to fully understand city finances and the budget and to bring up any other questions and concerns that they may have. I will have one issue to discuss, and I mentioned it previously to the city manager. I think Mr. Gearbaugh and Councilmember Harmont were privy to these conversations when we prepped the agenda, but I wanted to make sure there was some dollars set aside to possibly bring in somebody from the outside to complete our police accreditation process that was begun a couple years ago. We could do a deeper dive into that in 2 weeks' time as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I do think it's still necessary. I appreciate your methodology. The only thing that I get concerned with is when you send out information is that we have violations of OMA because we want to respond, and it just gets a little bit hairy with how people are responding, and it's easy to hit the reply all button, or you want to make sure that everyone understands, the question asked and the response given. And so I think having everybody in the same room at the same time, looking at the same line is very important.
Okay. Mr. Seal?
I think, for me anyway, the subsequent meeting would be redundant. However, I share Ms. Rice and Mr. Gearbaugh and your sentiments, Mr. Mayor, that if the newer council people feel the need to go forward with another meeting, I'd be more than happy to join in.
Okay, Mr. Lesh?
Well, I've reviewed the presentations, and they were very clear and concise, so I feel I could easily come over and ask any questions, since I know where you are.
Let's do this then. In light of the comments, one, in support of an additional meeting, and two, indicating that a lot of people have very few additional questions or concerns. I don't think meeting at 5:30 would be necessary. I think probably an hour would suffice. So unless there's objection, let's change the proposed work meeting on the 1st to 6 p.m. I don't like to push back in important matters, but it seems like it's an inevitability that we'll be discussing the wellness initiative then on the 15th. Are you amenable to that, Councilmember Rice?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay, Councilmember Harmont?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Yes, as long as we are sure that we're going to finish the budget with that next meeting and that there isn't any carryover.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if there is carryover, then I would feel comfortable with bumping the wellness.
I think that's well taken. So obviously a tentative on the wellness, assuming that we reach consensus after our work meeting on the 1st. Mr. Seal?
Fine with me.
Mr. Lesh? Okay. And then I wanted to, or actually I can't steal credit for this. The city manager and Mr. Harrington were the ones who proposed it, but we'll likely have a work meeting either in May or maybe the 1st of June to discuss economic development. I was notified last week through the representatives at SEMCOG that they are establishing an Economic Development Council in light of a lot of challenges that local municipalities are facing, but also the establishment of said group reflects the fact that we do not have a broad, comprehensive strategic economic development plan for the region. So I do expect some resources to come out of that, which will be very applicable. The communication that I received invited the city to participate on the council, and of course I enthusiastically responded that we would. It'll likely include myself and maybe Mr. Harrington at some meetings. I expect confirmation of our appointment probably by the end of this week, so resources should be made available to us by the end of April, beginning of May at the very latest. So stay tuned, but we'll likely have, again, a meeting focused on economic development strategy sometime in the next 60 to 90 days. Okay? Anything else on upcoming meetings? No? All right. Then we come now to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes once you begin. And again, I believe we're asking you to utilize the handheld mic because the one at the podium is not functioning properly this evening.
And this is working?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Mary Hess, I have some of the paperwork that I forgot at the beginning. The one thing, though, on the liquor license renewal, I'm sorry that no one was concerned about glasses falling and breaking at the bottom of the table. I think there should be something as far as for the safety of the residents and also the people that are dining out. And then as far as the drug task force, I'm wondering if we would still have the drug bend in the police department. The mayor nodded his head and council nodded their head too. That's good. Okay, and then as far as the marijuana, I have no problem with it being here, but I think it's important to safety. I think of safety a lot. And I think that when we have an armed guard taking the marijuana or whatever purchases to the car, among children who may be going to a dance studio, that's scary. You know, I mean, just seeing an officer with a gun, and it's not our officer, of course. And I would hope that something, as far as the 5 parking places, that Mr. Harrington, of course, can use his discretion, but it is our city, and I'm trying to be kind, but it is, and I care, and I would hope that those 5 parking places will be next to the entrance. And another thing I'm concerned about, whether a truck would have cannabis sold here on a great big sign of a truck and them parking in one of these parking places for additional advertisement. The one thing is, as far as I've watched the meeting at home, and there's no information given. The ordinances are passed, and you keep wonder what that was about. And, but thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there additional citizen comments this evening? You have 3 minutes.
Good evening again.
Nope, it's on. It's on.
Okay. Changming Fan. Mr. Mayor, council, friends, it's kind of late. I want to be brief. Saline got the lead. The project Saline Area Light Tower, not just for the environment, but also for job creation, for money purpose, so multiple purpose, multiple functions of the building. I submitted already the draft proposal. It's kind of a survey form. Community clean, community change grant survey. I haven't finished it. The deadline is April 1st. I really like Mr. Mayor, Jack Seal, and others help me to finish that up. Shrink from 35 pages to a couple of pages. Get to the point. Why Saline have the lead for this project? Super high, super smart, super light, super bright. This building is grow, not been built. And it also can be pilot start from 0.3 mile high to 1 mile high, and can be worldwide, anywhere. Compared with the project big budget, US in history never spent a huge amount of money, build a floating wind turbine, partially made in China, shipped down here. Salt initiative is just the opposite. The job creation, 6 different kind of job creation. Starting from high schoolers to scientists got a job. And also most important is togetherness. Another important thing is that we harvest the cloud energy. Never mentioned about the 9 of the other renewable energy. Nobody talk about that. Saline got the lead. I don't want the lead. I want to be the follower. But at this point, please help me to finish up this proposal and start the pilot project, at least the discussion. The discussion, we can say that Saline have some kind of common sense, or Saline, what do you call that? Convention or whatever. Do I have minutes of time?
19 seconds.
I'm so excited to hear people like you, some of them against the pass already 5-2 of marijuana. I think that people need the change, people need the challenge. Not because of we got everything, we have to really change to the height to protect this earth, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Are there any additional? Just leave it on the podium. Thank you. Any additional citizen comments? Clerk Royal, did we receive any written comments in advance of tonight's meeting, which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time?
No, sir.
Easy enough. Then please note our upcoming meetings, and the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn then at 9:03 unless there is additional business.
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh to adjourn, seconded by CO. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. She's not feeling well tonight.
She's in the cloud.
Yep, she participated remotely.
Yeah, she was on the TV.
Yep.
She was like calling in.